Blessings, beloveds. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer, with you today, sharing some more astrology. Um, the one subject that I love to share and love to talk about. Right, so today we are going to have a little look into Ceres, the asteroid series. Now, the main asteroids that I use are Ceres, Juno, Vesta, and Pallas Athena, and some others in relation to relationship astrology, which I've already touched on in previous videos. But today's focus is Ceres. Now, the asteroid goddess Ceres is by far one of the most powerful asteroids, I think, in terms of how literal her pathology and her mythology shows up in people's lives. And, you know, unfortunately, because her mythology has quite a dark, tragic, story and quite a tragic ending. It's a story of tragedy, really. For those of you who don't know Ceres, she represents the mothering, nurturing, unconditional love principle. And in mythology, she had a daughter called Persephone, and her daughter, who was extremely close to her, and she was close to her daughter. They used to, basically spend all their time together. They were really, there was this beautiful, unconditional love, nurturing energy exchange between them. And Ceres just loved her daughter so much. She was so protective of her and so attached to her as well. So the issue of attachment in people's lives regarding the mothering principle, whether it's your own parents or whether it's your own children, because Ceres shows up in our lives from the point of view of how we mother and how we were mothered. So she had this incredible relationship with her daughter. And anyway, long story short, her daughter, who's named Persephone, was abducted by Pluto. So the myth is very much highlighted by the energy of Pluto and Ceres. That story of Ceres Pluto is a very powerful story, and because it has that tragic component to it, which basically connects to loss and grief, because when Pluto abducted Persephone, which is what happened, he abducted her and took her into the underworld as his wife. So she became like the queen of the underworld, as it were, but it was against her will. You know, she didn't want to go. She was forced. She was abducted by Pluto, Hades, the underworld. So Ceres spent a large portion of the year mourning and grieving the loss of her daughter. And this happened for a very, very, very long time. Eventually, Pluto, also known as Hades in terms of the Greek name, allowed Persephone to reunite with her mother back on the earth plane, as it were, and but that was only for a short period of time throughout the year. So the basic fundamental story is that Ceres was mostly in mourning and grief, you know, throughout her life ever since her daughter was abducted. So this story shows up very, very strongly when we're looking at Ceres astrologically in the birth chart. And when Ceres goes wrong in the birth chart, for whatever reason that may be, and that could be a number of different reasons relating to where Ceres is placed, the sign she's in, the house she's in, the aspects that she has, and certainly past life connections to that Ceres can also trigger and manifest and show in various ways in the person's life currently. So there's a number of different things that would define or describe Ceres gone wrong, to put it quite simply. So she is the mother nurturing principle. Now, we say that she's the mother because she is, but when you're looking at her in your birth chart, if your father was the primary caregiver for you, then he would be the one connected to that series in your chart, even though he's a male. So you've just got to keep an open mind with these sorts of assessments. It you know, it's essentially the nurturing principle that we need in our lives, and that we also need to give to others. So it's a reciprocal energy and relationship where we receive and give on the basis of that unconditional love and nurturing. And that ties into our self-esteem and self-worth. So Ceres has got a lot to say about self-esteem and self-worth and our relationship to that within our own selves, depending on where she is in the birth chart, and what sort of relationship, we had in with our parents as we were growing up, whether the nurturing principle was healthy and functional and received and given, or whether it was deprived and dysfunctional in some kind of way, which frequently does happen to people. Now, I'm going to be using an example today of two people that are very dark. They're very dark human beings because of what they've done. They are two people that are known to the public now because they were arrested January of 2018 with a bunch of alleged charges against them. I don't think the case is over yet. Anyway, who I'm talking about, Louisa Turpin and David Turpin, a couple in America who basically they were married, they had 13 children together, and the Ceres myth and story is seen through their birth charts and their composite chart. It's quite outstanding, as a matter of fact, what shows up with Ceres, and this is why I was inspired to use this example, even though it's a horrible story. It's a very dark story, but these are the things that do happen in life for certain people. So they had 13 children. These 13 children were basically chained to their beds. They never had anything to do with the outside world their entire lives. The ages ranged from, I think, 5, 6 years old was the youngest one, and the eldest was 29 years old. Now imagine these 13 children were chained to their beds. They weren't allowed to see the daylight. So this is Ceres. This is all this dark energy, being abducted. These children were abducted by their own parents, essentially. They were malnourished. They were fed once a day, very, very little food once a day. They were only allowed to shower once per year. They had no contact, no relationship with anybody else or anybody in the outside world. Their mental and emotional development was severely stunted and severely dysfunctional. Naturally, it would be, given how they lived. They were mentally and sexually and emotionally abused by both their parents. So it's a very, very dark, disturbing, horrific story, and it's been labelled the House of Horrors. Now, there was a program on TV last night on this case, and I watched it, which is what inspired me to do this video. And this is, and I've said this before, this is how you learn astrology. So when I saw this case come up on TV last night, I don't watch TV hardly ever at all, but occasionally something might show up that is of interest to me, and I use it basically to learn more of how astrology works. It's what I always do. So I was watching the case, and I looked up their date of births online. I found their date of births, no time of birth, but even though there's no time of birth, their date of births alone is enough to show us what's been going on. And and I even looked at their composite chart with no time of birth. Again, with that, it's outstanding what you could see, and I'm going to show you these charts in a moment. So just to speak about Ceres a little bit more, astrologically, as I said, you know, she shows in our birth chart whatever zodiac sign she's in your birth chart. So there are 12 zodiac signs, as we know. So Ceres has 12 styles, if you like, of the nurturing that is sought and given based on what sign she's in your chart. And the house location shows you the area of life that you seek to experience that unconditional love, that nurturing, that nourishment. Because Ceres has got to do with nourishment. You know, it's nurturing on a number of different levels. She's also connected to food, and you know, she was the goddess of agriculture and wheat and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So when her daughter was abducted, she made the earth barren, not able to produce crops and food. And that was a result of her anger, her fury, and her distress, and her grief, and her pain and suffering and mourning as a result of having her daughter abducted. So the matter of food correlates very strongly with Ceres. So I've seen in charts many times over where people may have an eating disorder, for instance. Ceres shows up very strongly. If there's been abuse on a number of different levels by family members, Ceres shows up very strongly, and so does Pluto for that matter. So it's well worth paying attention to, and understanding her story and her pathology and her mythology, because there's a lot that you can learn from her and what she shows in the birth chart. So it's the nurturing that we need to receive and give, as I said, you know, depending on what sign she's in, that style of nurturing that we need. And the house shows the location, the area that we seek to experience that. So if Ceres has hard aspects to her in the chart, then it would typically show up as the nurturing principle gone wrong, if you like. But this does not mean that there can be no recovery or no healing or no resolution. Of course there can be. There always can be with anything, even with all hard aspects as well. But the point is this: when she's in hard aspects in the chart, when I say hard aspects, I'm talking about a conjunction to Pluto, an opposition to Pluto, a square to Pluto, to Saturn, to Mars, possibly even Uranus. So those sorts of planets can be very problematic when they connect to Ceres through a hard aspect, conjunction, opposition, or square. If, however, Ceres has soft aspects to planetary energies that are not inherently violent or difficult, such as Jupiter and Venus, for instance, then the nurturing principle has a real different story to it. It's connected to love and to growth and expansion and things like that, Jupiter and Venus. And the soft aspects just merely point to the fact that the nurturing principle is integrated in a very healthy way, and in a way that's easy. It works. So the harder aspects basically point to the fact that the nurturing principle has got a lot of work to kind of go through, if you like, to be integrated on that healthy functional level. So that can be achieved, but it usually seems to be the case that it's not achieved until the inherent kind of problems that one will encounter with a difficult Ceres in their birth chart, until those experiences take place, and then the person, you know, can ultimately find some healing and resolution. Now, I'm being a bit broad here because you know, it really depends on the story of the person and how that nurturing principle went wrong, or how it failed them, or, you know, what the challenges have been, what the issues have been, and so forth. But if it shows up in abuse in some kind of way, or eating disorders, or self-worth issues, it all stems essentially from that nurturing that was not there to begin with for the individual. So something's gone wrong with the nurturing function as they were growing up. And that results in these various experiences, and so many more for that matter. All right, so the very interesting thing about this couple that were arrested in January, I had a look at the transits for January, and it's really quite mind-blowing. So it was actually January the 14th of this year, 2018. What happened was two of the children escaped from the house, and they'd been planning this escape for a couple of years, and eventually they found an opportunity and the courage to take that step, and they escaped through some window somehow. And out of the two of them, one actually ran back home, just through sheer fear of, you know, what I can't remember if it was a male or a female that ran back. But anyway, one of them ran back to the house because they were just terrified. And the other one, which was a 17-year-old, just went for it, absolutely went for it. And she was a female, and she had a mobile phone, a cell phone, as you guys call it in America, that had, I think it had no credit on it or something like that, but she could dial what you guys call 911 in America, and here in Australia we dial 000. So she had enough understanding to know that that's what she could do, and that's what she needed to do, and that's indeed what she did. So she notified the police, and on that same day, and the police went to the house, and what they found was beyond comprehension, you know, beyond what your mind could possibly imagine. You know, the rest of the kids were chained to these beds. It was pitch black dark in there. As I said, they were all malnourished. They, you know, their entire life they'd hardly eaten any food. The 29-year-old, who's a fully grown adult, only weighed 37 kilos, which is 80 pounds, I think, when you convert it to pounds. So extremely underweight. Their mental capacity was well below the normal standard of development of mental function for their ages. So the 17-year-old, in other words, had a mental IQ, if you like, of about a 10-year-old. So you know, these kids and the adult, because there's an adult there, a 29-year-old, which is interesting. She was having her Saturn return when all this came to light. You know, we don't even know how these kids will recover through this extreme torture and abuse that they endured their entire life. Now, so as I said, when I looked at the transits for what was going on when they were arrested, I looked at the transits not in relation to their birth charts. I'm sure there'll be things there as well, but I looked at it in relation to the composite chart of this couple. And as I said, it was pretty mind-blowing, which I'll show you what showed up. And in addition to that, as we know, this year, 2018, there's 5 eclipses in total. We've got one more to go, which is happening in, what are we? About a week's time or so. So one more eclipse to go on the 11th of August. But if we go back to the beginning of the year, there was a solar eclipse on the 16th of February. And interestingly enough, even this eclipse was heavily connected to the composite chart. Now remember, I've said before that eclipses start to kick in post the actual eclipse date and are well and truly active, pre the eclipse date and are well and truly active post the eclipse date. So on February the 16th, which was a month later after their arrest, there was solar eclipse, which was at 27 degrees of Aquarius. And that solar eclipse is actually opposite the composite Mars in their composite chart, which again is a, just astonishing, remarkable example of the eclipse hitting off the Mars in their composite chart, and you'll understand why this is significant. But even if, before we look at the chart, just think about what Mars stands for. Mars is, at its worst, it's violence, aggression, brutality, all those things, which is what these people are responsible for, essentially. So, with no further ado, let me share my screen and just quickly show you a couple of things. Sorry, I just want to make sure that yes, that's right. Okay. All right, let me just pop this window. Oh, it's over here. Okay, so what I'll show you guys first is, as I said, I've got no times of birth for these two individuals, but either way, it's just outstanding without a time of birth what shows up. Okay, so here's the mother of these 13 children. Her name is Louisa Turpin, and this is her birth chart without a time of birth. So never mind where everything is placed in the house, because in the houses, because we simply don't know where everything is, given that we don't have a time of birth. I've just put in 12 p.m. just as a random time. It doesn't really matter. What you need to note is very simply, and this is what I'm going to show you guys now, is we're not even unpacking the entire chart. And this is to demonstrate to you how powerful Ceres is, and how dark her energy can be when she goes wrong. Now, I realise that this example is very extreme, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is that the astrology is spectacular, and this is what can show up when Ceres goes terribly wrong. Now, there's probably, I don't know how many people on the planet that have endured various things relating to their own Ceres that the world will never find out about, right? So there are obviously different levels of how Ceres can manifest. Okay, so if you have a look down here, what we can see is Ceres is conjunct this person's South Node. That immediately alerts us to something from the past with Ceres has taken place that wouldn't have been good. It couldn't have been, because look at the way it showed up in this lifetime in her life. In addition to that, it has been said that she herself endured a life of abuse from her own mother. So that's very interesting to me, because she's possibly got moon in Taurus, but I really have a very big question mark around that, simply because moon in Taurus is exalted and it's actually quite a good place for the moon. So, look, because we don't know her time of birth, her moon may go back into the sign of Aries, which is probably likely to be the case, I would say, because the moon in Aries is more fitting of describing the abusive mother that she had. And certainly if it goes back to, a degree close to Saturn, that would really describe the relationship between her and her mother. Saturn can often be cruelty and a lot of difficulty when Saturn is conjunct the moon. So that would be very fitting to describe her mother. But as I said, I don't have a birth time, so we don't know for sure. But despite that, Ceres on the south node is a big alarm bell signature of this chart, especially given the life that the person has lived and the acts that she has performed against her own 13 children, which were beyond horrific. In addition to that, if we want to unpack this a bit further, you can have a look here. She's got Mars conjunct Sun, and also, no, Mercury is too far. But just the Gemini component, you know, Gemini can have a real dark side to it as well. Gemini can be, when it's operating at a lower level, it's that it has that capacity to live a double life, which is what she was doing, because on the surface, with regards to what she was presenting and showing to family members and a couple of friends, she was presenting very differently to clearly what she was hiding. So there's that double life, if you like, and the Mars there with the Sun, you know, is clearly showing up here in a way of aggression and violence and abuse, because Mars has the capacity to bring those sorts of qualities through. So, you know, as I said, you can even unpack that. But really all I wanted to show here is, because in this chart and in her husband's chart and in the composite chart and in the transit chart, Ceres is the most prominent, outstanding signature. And Ceres is what describes this horrific life that these 13 children endured and lived through. Okay, so there's her chart. So let's just pop out of that. Now I want to show you her husband's chart. Okay, now yeah, there's a lot of distortions here too. So what I want to show here is Ceres is in Taurus, 25 degrees of Taurus in his chart. Now that's not really going to change depending based on whatever time he was born on this day. This is why we can look at these charts without a time, because when we're talking about the nodes in Ceres, which is what we are actually looking at, that's not going to change throughout a day, okay, in terms of its degrees, which is why we know for certain that these aspects were in place despite what time they may have been born. So Ceres is forming a square to this man's south node. So there's Ceres showing up again in a very significant way with the south node, and clearly something's gone wrong there with the nurturing principle in this man's life, which possibly relates to past life issues as well. And he also has Chiron on the south node, which isn't great. And to go a little bit further, he's got this really interesting little stellium here with Mars, Neptune and Mercury, all in Scorpio. So there's the dark side of Scorpio coming through in basically the life that he lived. And, you know, Scorpio is about secrets, the underworld, darkness, abuse, sexual abuse, control, manipulation. Neptune, Mercury can be deception, lying, which is clearly what he did his entire life. The Mars, Neptune, you know, is an energy that, when that goes wrong, can be incredibly dysfunctional. And the Scorpio draws in this the level of abuse, abduction, the underworld stuff. So Scorpio is all that Pluto type energy, right? So we can, describe a lot of the way he was just through that little stellium right there. Also, what I noticed was that he has Jupiter in Capricorn, and Jupiter in Capricorn is in its fall. Not a good Jupiter, in other words. So that's a Jupiter gone wrong, clearly. Now, this couple were apparently connected to some religious Christian cult church type thing as well. And it is when they left that church that they basically started engaging in all this abusive sort of behaviour, which, I mean, it would have been going on to some extent before that, but when they were released from the church through their own doing, they explored a much darker world where there was drugs involved and experimenting sexually with all sorts of people and doing all sorts of weird things. So there's Jupiter in Capricorn gone wrong for this guy. Now, I've always said, you know, Jupiter in detrimental fall can be, unfortunately, can be really, really telling in the person's life from the point of view of experiencing a sense of loss of faith, or really having no faith in something greater, in the divine and in oneself. So there's Jupiter in its fall, clearly gone wrong here. In addition to that, because we don't know this guy's time of birth, I get the feeling that he's got moon in Capricorn. If you see here, his moon, because of the time I've chosen, has put the moon in 0 degrees of Aquarius. But it wouldn't take much to take that moon back into Capricorn, which would make more sense to me. And I reckon it was probably conjunct Saturn as well. So there's another problematic moon conjunct a Jupiter that's in fall, a Saturn that's in rulership, but and the rulership component may have described the fact that this guy was actually a professional, believe it or not. He actually had a professional career. I think he was an engineer or something like that. So he had a professional life covering, creating this mask of what was really going on with him and what he was really capable of, which is all this Mercury in Scorpio, Neptune in Scorpio, Mars in Scorpio, very dark energy, you know, clearly manifested in the darkest possible way that these energies can manifest. But, as I said, Ceres, square the South Node. So that's his chart. And as you saw, his wife had Ceres on the South Node. Now, this is really outstanding. So their composite chart is mind-blowing. Okay. Right. So here is their composite chart. This is without times of birth. And it's just spectacular. I'm hoping that those of you who've got a good eye in astrology, you've already noticed what I'm about to say. Okay. Look up here don't worry about the location of the houses, because that's not going to be accurate, because I don't have times of birth for these people. But it doesn't matter. What you need to see is that there is a Sun Ceres in Leo conjunction in their composite chart. And that's it. That's all you need to see. That's all you need to know. There's Ceres in the composite chart conjunct the Sun. Now Leo rules children. Ceres is the tragic story of loss and grief and abduction and abuse, all that sort of stuff. So there you have it. That's what showed up very, very clearly in these people's charts, which describes basically the life that they've lived. And this is just a very powerful example to demonstrate to you the power of Ceres when she goes wrong. Naturally, there are other things that we could unpack, but not in terms of house placement, because we don't know where things are, because we don't have their times of birth. But look at that moon Chiron. That's very interesting to me. It appears exact here, but that's because of the times that I chose. Now, that may not necessarily be exact, depending on what time they were born, but it wouldn't be too far. So the aspects that you see will generally pretty much be the same regardless of their times. The only thing that would change is the house placement of all the different planets in their composite chart. So this composite chart is showing a relationship that is defined by these two people coming together. So this composite chart it's like a third entity, and it only comes to life because these two people came together. That's how composite charts work. So you can do a composite chart between yourself and your favorite author, your favorite musician, whoever, and that composite chart might show up spectacular, beautiful features, or the opposite, really difficult, challenging, difficult features. But you'll never know how that will play out unless in life the two of you merge together, right? So there's what I'm getting at is that a composite chart is only activated when the two people clearly come together in a relationship. So this is a composite chart for these two people that did come together, and when they came together, their energies, both their birth charts that came together, which formed this third chart, which is the composite chart, was activated. So these energies were activated through these very two specific people coming together. This is the power of composite astrology, relationship astrology. So, yeah, anyway, that whole little stellium there is very fascinating to me, but particularly Ceres conjunct the Sun in the sign of children. There you have it. We don't really even need to look at anything else. Now, the other thing I want to show you guys is, this is just so fascinating. When they were arrested in January of this year, 2018, here are the transits. So, okay, so this is just mind-blowing. This is the composite chart in the center. The inner wheel, the smaller wheel, is the composite chart. And the transits are reflected through the second wheel. Now, those of you who've got a sharp eye, your eyes would have gone to the outstanding feature already. But look at this. What we had was transiting Ceres was having a return. Okay, so in the composite chart, this couple have Ceres in Leo. And when they were arrested, when they got busted, when they came down, when they became undone, and the whole world knew about them, they were having their composite chart was having a Ceres return. So there's the myth, that the Ceres return triggered something in their composite chart, which somehow correlates to their arrest. So there you have it. There's Ceres in both their natal charts in a prominent position, prominent in the composite. The composite chart is just freaky, it's outstanding. Sun conjunct Ceres in Leo, and they had 13 children that they abused for 29 years. Incredible. And when they were caught, Ceres shows up again. So this is a really good way to learn astrology when big things like this happen in life, or it might just be people in your own life, where things are going on. It's just what usually seems to happen is the story that you're hearing or seeing about a person or a couple or a group of people, for that matter. What you will notice is that story has a particular signature theme which correlates to very specific planetary energies, and it will show up in the various layers and forms, just as it has here, as I've demonstrated to you today. Both individuals have Ceres strongly emphasized in their birth charts. Ceres is incredibly emphasized in the composite chart, and Ceres is incredibly emphasized in the chart of transits that relates to their composite chart when they were busted. Now, just one more thing and then I'll wrap it up. This is just going to be a short video to show you the power of Ceres. Okay, so the solar eclipse that occurred on the 16th of February of this year, which was in Aquarius. Now I'm going to put that chart of that eclipse around the composite chart. Check out what happens here. Okay, so once again, the smaller circle with the planets in it is the composite chart, and planets around it is the chart of the eclipse date of February 16th, 2018. Now, this was a month after they were busted, but like I said, eclipses are activated and kick in, weeks prior to the date and weeks post the eclipse date. So what we have here, which is remarkable, this solar eclipse, here it is down here. You can see that there's a sun-moon conjunction, which is a new moon, okay? And in this case, it happens to be an eclipse, solar eclipse. Now, here's the node down here. It's a partial solar eclipse, which is why the node is, fairly far away. That's what defines a partial solar eclipse, the fact that the node is not right on the sun and the moon. As you can see, it's about 14 degrees difference. Anyway, none of that really matters. What matters is this. That solar eclipse is exactly opposite the composite Mars in their chart. Now, if you need, more than that to convince you that eclipses work, that Ceres shows up, a really dark, tragic story in people's lives, I don't know what else I could show you, really. What I've shown today is very clear cut. It's very straightforward, very clear. It's not complex. It's not convoluted. It's just right there in your face. Yeah. Okay. So, is there anything I've left out? No, that's it. So, purpose of this demonstration today was to show you guys the power of eclipses and the power of Ceres, which I've done. So that's the story, very briefly, without going into hours of delineation, which clearly don't even need to, because you can just see very quickly what describes this tragic story and what happened to these 13 kids. I'd love to have all their charts. That would be incredibly fascinating to me. But having the charts of the parents who committed these crimes, because that's what they are crimes against their own children, it's beyond twisted, beyond, I don't even know what to say. But anyway, what is interesting and what I love to understand is the astrology of how things work. So this was a very good example for you to learn from. There was also, I read an astrologer called Demetra George, who is the astrologer that's, she's the main astrologer, you could say, that's really developed the understanding of the asteroid goddesses. She's the astrologer who's written a lot of books on the asteroid goddesses. She's very big on the asteroid goddesses, and she does tours in Greece, and she takes you to the old sites of where these myths emerged from, and it's just amazing what she does. But anyway, this is one of her books. I've got all her books, and if you really want to understand the story and the mythology of the main asteroids that are generally used in the birth chart, I highly recommend you get this book if you already haven't got it. You'll always go back to it. It's so rich. Demetra does a beautiful job in basically letting you know what the entire myths were for Ceres, Vesta, Juno, and Pallas Athena, and they're the main ones that she delineates in this book and gives you a really insightful understanding of their mythology and the asteroids in the signs and the houses. So definitely a book worth getting. Just seeing if there's anything I can share with you that might be of interest. Quite amazing. Ceres connects to. Now, I've shared today quite a dark version of how Ceres can show up and manifest. But Ceres does connect to a lot of beautiful things as well. She connects to counsellors. She connects to cooks. um, she connects to a lot of different things, you know. It just depends. Um, but so health and healing through food, you know. So diet, exercise. So health nutritionists, you know, people who work with people on those levels, they would probably have a strong Ceres in their chart. She connects to all that sort of stuff. Diet, herbs, food complexes, overweight, underweight, all those issues, all food-related disorders and physical health are seen through Ceres. Childbirth training, children's rights, mother's rights, child abuse, primary education, all these are connected to Ceres. Ceres values the family, deep family roots and ties, extended family systems, communes, clanship systems, tribes, also connected to Ceres. Farming, the land, organic gardeners, farmers, cooks, I already said that before, restaurants, all that stuff's connected to Ceres on a lighter note. So as I said, when you're looking at Ceres in the birth chart, clearly the first thing you need to assess is what sign is she in, because whatever sign she's in, that's the style of the nurturance that the individual needs. So, you know, very simply put, if Ceres is in Aries, then the person who has Ceres in Aries, you know, would have needed to experience being loved and nurtured through the encouragement of being free, confident, courageous, independent, having those sorts of things, you know, nurtured in a healthy way for the person. You know, it's a very simple example. And the way that the person, you know, gives nurturance to others is through encouraging others to be parents, yeah, to be free, to be independent, to be courageous, you know, those sorts of things. So the style is seen through the sign. The house shows where a person really seeks that kind of nurturing experience and where they give it, you know, as well, as I said before. And if she has hard aspects which create conflicts and things like that, then it usually shows up in the person's life in various ways. That is, where they may have not had the appropriate nurturing, where there may have been experiences of abuse or just lack of that mothering, nurturing energy to begin with. And, you know, if she has soft aspects, then clearly it's the opposite to that. It's the nurturing principle that's really supported and has flowed and delivered and given a lot to the person on that level. And equally then they're able to really give back to others. But as I said, you know, a difficult Ceres that is presented with hard aspects does not imply that a person cannot work through that and heal through that, but it does require work, you know. These patterns that show up in our birth charts, whatever difficult or challenging patterns may be there, described through certain planets and certain aspects and certain house locations, they're not random, you know, they're not there accidentally. They are there because the soul has chosen to work through these patterns and to become more conscious and to become more aware and to heal, to work through, to integrate, to evolve, to grow. So it's, you know, it's never a case of it's bad luck or, you know, you're being punished. That perspective is very disempowering. You know, I believe anyway that the truth of the matter is that each of us have chosen, you know, the birth chart that we are born into. So the time that we are born and the family that we are born into and the inherent patterns and signatures that show up, the soul that is you has chosen those very specific energy patterns, which will manifest in a number of different ways, because any two people can have a Sun-Pluto conjunction in their birth chart, and both those people will have a very different experience of Sun-Pluto. So, you know, there are energy patterns that are seen in many different people's lives or charts, but the way each person, the way each soul experiences those, and the way they evolve through them, and the way they grow, and the way they manifest and integrate, and all those things, is a very, very unique and individual experience, right? It's the way it always is. So I'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much again for watching, guys, and thank you for subscribing, and thanks for your beautiful comments and questions and feedback, and feel free to continue to do so. As I said, I try my best to respond to all questions and comments. And if there are any, I'll just put it out there, if there are any requests for anything that people would really like to understand more, if there's a bit of a topic that, you know, you'd like me to unpack or explore, put it out there, and I'll see what it is, and hopefully be able to offer you something in relation to that. In addition to that, as I said, feel free to contact me for a reading if you'd like to have a private reading with me. And there are various types of readings. Again, I always rectify a person's chart when they come to me. The rectification is done once and once only, because once you have your rectified time, you never need to rectify your chart again. Very useful to have your accurate time of birth, because the timing of events will be correct, which is really important. No use not having the right time of birth and going to an astrologer, and the astrologer saying to you, well, in the next month or two, you're going to have XYZ in such and such place, and these are the likely, you know, energy patterns that you'll be dealing with, and these are the likely possibilities and manifestations, and this is how you can work with this energy. And now they've said that based on the time you've given them, and the time you've given them is incorrect, right? So when they say to you that in the next month or two you will experience X, Y, Z, and your time of birth is wrong, then what they've said to you is not going to match with the time that they've told you it's going to happen, and that can leave you feeling disappointed or confused, or thinking that astrology is a bunch of crap. Not. It's just that when the time of birth is wrong, then everything else is out of sync. It's pretty logical. So, yeah. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Hope you're all taking care of yourselves, and yeah, really taking some time out, especially during these very heavy eclipses. And we've only got one more to go, thank goodness. Mercury is retrograde. That's been given a fair bit of grief to people, I've noticed. Very funny. Not funny in some cases, but anyway. Okay. All right. So here we go. See you later, guys. Thank you. Much love. Bye.